Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie Scaberis, and I'd like to welcome my guest speaker, co-host, Gulair. Hi, Gulair, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, so today we have a friend of DD, my ex-co-host, Samson Hailu. Hey, Samson, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Julia. How are you?
Good, thank you. Do you want to just reverse back a bit so we can see your whole face?
Sure. All right. One
Okay.
second. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you. I'll just do the acknowledgement of country. Do your life, your voice, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land to which we work and live, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community. We pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We remember all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years for the rights for themselves and other people with disabilities and human rights for all. Nothing about us without us. Okay, guys. So we'll just start off. Samson, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background?
My ethnic background is I'm from Ethiopia.
Sorry, can you stop sharing the screen?
Okay.
That's better.
My ethnic background is from Ethiopia, and one of my many talents is that I'm able to speak my language. So I can speak Tigrinya. Unfortunately, I can't read and write it though, but that's still a very useful skill to have to be able to speak and understand the language. So yeah.
Yes, I'm the same. I can speak fluently. I can hold a whole conversation in Maltese, but I can't read or write. So yeah. Anyway, so okay. So what goals have you achieved, and how do you navigate your way around the system to achieve these goals?
I believe that I've achieved a lot of goals. Like one of my goals was to complete my education, my diploma of community services and things like that. And one of the ways that I was able to achieve my goal was having the right supports through the NDIS system to be able to help me achieve that and be able to provide me with things like personal care supports and things of that nature. Yeah.
So just to go back a bit, were you born in Australia?
No, I was actually born in Sudan, which is a neighboring country to Ethiopia.
Okay. Can I ask about what the attitude is to disability in Sudan?
It's when I was there and when I was younger back then, the country isn't very well developed to be able to support people with disabilities. You think Australia has access problems, just wait till you go around the world, you know what I mean? So that's also one of the biggest problems and barriers around even, I didn't even receive an education until I came to Australia just because of that factor that I wasn't able to access their school system. I wasn't able to receive a formal education like all the other students because of the access.
How old were you when you came to Australia?
I was 9.5.
Can you just move your chair back so I can see your face?
Yeah.
We're going live to YouTube at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so you were 9.5. So in Australian standards, you missed like about 4.5 years of your education. So
yes.
you've done well though, Samson, to catch up. You must have a pretty good IQ, so that's pretty good. Yeah. You speak eloquently, and yeah, it's just really interesting. I find people's backgrounds and their
It's
late
interesting to see how well people develop as well. Like what people can adapt to and overcome as well. You think things like this would be a potential barrier and a problem for people, but for me, you know, usually what happens with kids who come from, another country trying to adapt to the system, they would initially get put into a, you know, a, a language class, language school before they actually started going into mainstream schools. But my problem was because of the school I went to, they didn't have their language schools upstairs, and that school was built over. I think it's about 250 years old now. So it's a pretty old school now. And they didn't really have wheelchair access in terms of like being able to access the language school upstairs. So I was unknowingly thrown into like, the normal deep end of just, okay, you're in grade 1 now, so you just go learn, go be like with everyone else. Even though I didn't know, I knew basic English because from watching things like The Simpsons growing up and things like that, I knew basic English, and so that's how I kind of learned the language when I wasn't here.
I've heard stories about people from other countries learning English from TV, but The Simpsons is a rather interesting one because of the language they use. And yeah,
Yeah.
my cousin actually, who's a few years older than me, he reckons that he was put into a higher class, not on purpose. He was taken to school the first day by a cousin. He said, "This is your class every day." And the class happened to be a couple of years older than what he was. So he basically had to learn how to read and write. Uh, so, yeah, these cold ethnic issues, it wouldn't be heard of today, really, but yeah, rather interesting. So, how bizarre is that? Anyway, so yeah, so how did you empower yourself to achieve these goals, Samson?
I guess, I had a lot of support and help in achieving my goals, things like being able to use the NDIS to help me provide me with support workers when needed and things like that. And, those were the kind of things that were holding me back quite a bit. And also the educational system did its best to do what it could do. And again, when I was studying at the same time, people in the educational system, I guess I was just around the right people at the right time. I was very fortunate, to be around those people that really understood my needs and be able to support me in terms of knowing what I needed and how to support me.
What about
Did they help you navigate the system a bit, Samson?
More or less the educational system around, it might be something like I might need an extra couple hours or, like a tutoring session. And, the school was able to provide that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That I was fortunate enough to be able to go to a TAFE university that allowed me to do that, to be able to provide me with those supports and things. Yeah.
What about before the NDIS? How did you manage then?
I, it was really tricky. Um, Speaking of before the NDIS, I had to. It took me a lot longer to finish my diploma compared to everyone else because of the fact that I couldn't start doing my placement until I had funding to be able to pay for my support worker, and because I didn't have the funds or I didn't have the means, I had to wait until you know around October of 2018 to be able to finish my to be able to finish the placement part of the course and things like that.
So did your culture, do you think it caused a barrier to reach your full potential, or is it inclusive?
Um, I guess for me, I guess not really because of how fluent my English is and what I understand. So I guess in that retrospect, I would say I was very fortunate. Um, so I don't really feel like it caused a lot of barriers for me because of how much I was able to, understand, grasp it. So I don't feel like um my culture got in the way of that. Obviously being able to some of the things that I did notice was, being able to break down the stigmas of, some of the issues that my parents had around my supports and things. Sometimes you might, my dad was a big believer in doing things yourself and not necessarily relying on people to help you because he's seen things like the medical system, people saying that they were going to help me but not coming through for me. So he's seen the system let me down quite a bit.
So your father was quite, he's quite pro, he's quite pro to you getting education. And what about your mother? Were they sort of like supportive in with your education?
Um, uh, uh, one, the only, one of the biggest things that my parents were very supportive of was my education. They're like, because, like, he used to say to me, look, the only way you're going to get out of this situation is by your mind. You know, my dad used to say to me, you, you don't, you can't do a lot of things that people can do. So you have to use your mind more than anyone else to get out of situations. So he was a really big advocate for education and all of that. So my dad tried his best to be, put me in situations where he tried his best to provide me with, things like extra tutoring when I was younger. Trust me, I didn't appreciate it back then, but obviously things are a bit different now. But in hindsight, looking back, I can say I appreciated it.
Is there a difference between genders in terms of education in your culture? Do you think? So if you were a woman, do you think you would have got the same support?
Mm, I I I believe so because my dad. I've got four other siblings, and three of them are girls. My dad's always supported them the same way he supported me. But so based on my own family experience, I'd have to say I I think whether I was the other gender or not, like a female or whatever, I would have still got the same support.
Yeah, because with a lot of cultures, I don't know whether it's by culture or whether it's family expectations. There wasn't really encouragement in
Yeah,
for women to be educated. Actually, it was actually frowned upon, and unfortunately, That seems to be the case for some cultures. But I looked at it as sort of like my way out of difficult situations because I do have health issues. Although I'm ambient, I do have health related issues, which, I can't really do really heavy physical work, find motor issues. So I had to figure out other ways to support myself and do a living. So yes, and I suppose when you have some limitations, look, we all have limitations in life.
Of course,
Every one of
yeah,
us, we
it's
are.
a normal thing to have limitations.
So what is my skill or my talent is not necessarily other people's talents. So yes, so I was called Talabora, which is it was actually a bit derogatory, but it's like I'm the one that likes to borrow, the academic that likes to borrow. But it wasn't said in a way that was really
Encouraged.
encouraged or positive. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure if the males were even close to,
I guess in a sense um I don't I can understand that because in most cultures men are seen as the providers.
mm,
So that's kind of why they're like, when it comes to education, getting a job and this and that, men are more encouraged than women because, that's just, it's in our natural DNA to be, especially for us men, it's our one desire is to be naturally be providers, you know what I mean? Take that mantle role of being a provider. It's in us to want to do that.
mm.
Not to say that women can't provide for themselves, but you want to be able to, you want to necessarily feel like you needed and contributing to the dynamics of the relationship. Not necessarily say women can't provide for themselves.
So would you say, Samson, that, if you had the opportunity and the challenges to go through being a model male in your culture, you follow the footsteps of your traditions?
I guess I I would follow some tradition and some. It's like what would you say? You it's like you take out the good with the bad, and because of what I've learned from you know from being in this culture and this environment, I would probably take the good parts, the good elements of this culture, and what they try to instill, and then combine it with my culture's good elements and what they try to instill, kind of like blend it together and make something new and kind of try to help both sides to see each other's point of view in a sense.
Yeah, it could be like a bit challenging. I was raised in a household where, dad did the dishes or he showed me how to do certain things, and there wasn't roles like that. But yeah, it's good. It's good that, you you gain strength from your culture, like being a cultural and linguistically diverse person in Australia is working for you.
Yeah, because I believe each culture has something to teach you, um, and you might not necessarily hold their beliefs or their traditions, but if you learn to sift through that, you can learn something, and you can be like, okay, let's in a sense let's make these people independent to a degree, where, because at the same time it's like, because it can also tilt the other way, where some women can be like, oh look, I don't necessarily need a man. I'm independent. I'm this and that, and all of this sort of stuff. See, that's detrimental because when they figure out later in life that they don't necessarily want to be alone, then by that time, no one really wants to be with them because of the toxicity of the way they've come to approach the situations and things. So it can be good and bad on like there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
I do agree with what you said earlier on, Samson, in that in cultures there's good and bad, and when you're either born in Australia or have learned to live in Australia as from born in another country, I think that's a really important point that you made that it's sort of like an amalgamation um, of two cultures, um, and it's really quite interesting that in like when you're in Australia, um, well, from what I've seen, Europe has moved on from the 1950s, but the people that were in Australia from migration after the 50s, they haven't necessarily moved on in their head. So
Yeah.
I still think that Australian culture has sort of like has a toxicity, toxicity culture, and that Europe will be the same as it was when they lived in Europe after the war. But it so hasn't. It's moved on. It's much more progressive, and yes. So I think when the older generations go back to their countries, they just realise how much of a fallacy that what they held true to their hearts. I see hear things like, if you were a model, you wouldn't be doing this and blah 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 blah. And until we went to Malta a long time ago, and it was really interesting because Malta did move on in a very big way, and and sometimes not in a very good way. So what I found was that there was a much more maturity in like women or girls, wouldn't call a woman at 12 years old, 12 and 13 years old, they go into nightclubs. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. And because, you're just exposed to all the dangers of adulthood and all that sort of stuff. And I sort of was a bit grateful that I was brought up in a conservative environment because I heard other stories of, teenagers getting STDs at only 15 years old, That's not good. It's not healthy. It's not good. So, in some ways, I value living a conservative approach, and in other ways, I resented it. So, that just to make one really. Would you like to
There's
comment on
theories.
it?
There's theories, yeah. There's theories about that, about migration and living in a culture that's different from yours. There's things that they say that before you could assimilate into the culture and be multiculturalist and those kind of things, you can go into communities and as you know, like certain language groups in certain parts of Melbourne, for example, like, a language group might be in St Kilda, another one might be in Dandenong, another one might be in Collingwood, or another one might be in Broadmeadows. And to actually assimilate, you need to be able to know what you have and what your beliefs are to be able to venture onto the other culture. So our like first generation or second generation people are doing what is the most normal thing, but people observe them and say things like they're in ghettos or they don't want to intermingle, and so they don't understand. But there is theory behind it to say that you do need to assimilate. You need to know what you're assimilating into by knowing what you currently believe in. And so that culture shock that comes from being in one country then going back to motherland, it's very different, and it hasn't progressed. It's progressed a lot more, and they're in a time capsule kind of thing.
And that also takes that also comes down to knowing yourself, and knowing who you are and what you stand for and what you're who you are just as a person, and your beliefs and what you stand for make you who you are. And some and that's the thing that I like to call soul work. And sometimes some people are just too afraid to not necessarily, not do the soul work necessarily, not take the time, invest in themselves, take that quiet time really and say, okay, I've seen this. Do I agree with this? I agree with this, and I don't agree with this. And, taking the time to be reflective and just being able to sit back and be like, I agree with this. I like this. I don't like this, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Coming from a coal background where a lot of immigrants went into food type businesses, you have to be quite strong to actually challenge, stereotypes and families. Because I'm just speaking from a personal perspective, and it's what I picked up on with your soul work and relating it to my family life. It didn't really happen for the other four siblings. They just followed the actual what was expected of them and the cultural beliefs. I don't think they really.
In a sense, they never went against the grain type thing. So they just followed what was comfortable.
Not at all. And I see problems. Well, I see problems in that and in their lives because they were brave to say no or to follow their passions or to say I'm not going to get married at 20 because I can do other things to be, I need to develop as a person. But what I have seen is them following the actual traditions and expectations. What I see is not happy people, even though I don't have anything to do with my family now. I don't see very happy people. Uh, and yeah, and I, on the other hand, even though I've had challenges in my life, I have done the soul work and the gone against the grain and chose not to marry and because I didn't think it was good for me personally for a lot of reasons. And so that was really frowned upon because, what are you going to do? You need, well, it wasn't really said, it was more acted. What are you going to do? Who's going to look after you? Blah, blah, blah. And my reaction was, well, I'm going to look after myself. And that's how it actually turned out. Very little support, very little, anything really. I had to get the education I need to pay for my life effectively. Even though I was living at home at that time, I realised that if I did not get that education, I'm going to be in lots of trouble for a lot of reasons. So I managed to, get the basics, a house, medical. I had to work out a lot of medical issues on my own because family were too busy. That their focus is on making money and doing that sort of stuff, which is commendable on one level, but on another level, it's like a bit heart wrenching when that money wasn't used to support a child in need. So I've had to deal with those issues on a very psychological level. But that's fine because that's worked out better for me in the end because I've
Yeah.
become independent. So yeah.
And speaking about money and families and things like that, a lot of families think that all you need to take care of a family is to be able to put a roof and food over their heads, but they don't actually realize that a lot of that work also requires that nurturing, that guidance from parents and all of that sort of stuff. And because kids don't really receive that, it can be detrimental to them later in life, because they look to other things to fulfill that you know that necessarily, that love and that emptiness, that love that they never receive from
Mm.
their parents. Just because just because you put food on the table, just because you put you know you give me a roof over my head and all that sort of stuff, if you don't actually take the time to know your child, encourage your child and nurture your child, then you're not really then that child is gonna be like, that's all you did, Dad. I never. So they're going to feel, may in a lot of cases, abandoned and empty. So that it takes all those elements that we've been talking about to be able to raise kids, to be able to give them a good foundation, and to be able to guide them to make the right choices and decisions.
Yeah, and also like with self-advocacy, I guess within your own nuclear family situation, if you've migrated, that would be, supportive and helpful to know the differences and look after like you probably had to be a self-advocate very early on in age too. If there's differences of expectations of time, like how our parents were or their parents were, like it's always changing, it's fluid. And the next generation think, well, this is what we need to do. Like each generation has their own baggage and gifts, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, and I've come to accept in life you can't give what you don't have. So if your parents don't have good emotional support growing up, for whatever through war, and we didn't have to. Well, a lot of us didn't have to go through the war in Australia, so in their life, not having to ration, food and supplies, we should be grateful, and that's very true. I am very grateful for not having to experience war and bombs and that sort of thing. I think that you are right, Samson. For a lot of people, that if you don't receive that emotional support, you could actually fall down the gaps and try to find that sort of support through antisocial behaviours, drugs, alcohol, and not really know why this is actually happening. So I think that what you so rightly mentioned, doing the soul work is really important for everyone to accept and move on and not consider themselves victims of circumstance, and just to have that that willingness to do that work and to create their own lives, to create their own narrative in life.
So
Yeah.
that's when all these ideas come about nature versus nurture in your upbringing and your background, and how like Samson was talking about, doing your soul work, so it's considering all the things that you can make to help you with your decision making in like Samson, go and do further education and get support to be able to study and do your placement, and and be encouraged by a family to take certain steps. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know exactly when we started, so we'll just continue. We'll see what happens. So, what are your future goals, Samson?
Mm, um, my future goals change on a regular basis. I mean, they change all the time. So, it really depends where, what I'm doing at the moment. And, I would obviously still like to, continue to advocate and inspire people. So my goals change all the time. Um, but based on how things are looking for me at that particular in time. Or I might find an interesting niche or something that I pick up along the way. So that due to my my life experiences and things, my goals change all the time. But I guess I'd still, in a nutshell, I'd still like to continue to um inspire people, to help people grow, and especially people with disabilities, give them that confidence to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, because if I can do it, you can do it as well. you know and just to be able to encourage them and to tell them it's okay to say no, it's okay to say you don't like certain things, or you want things done a certain way, and it's okay to be like, no, I don't like this, or I like that, or I don't like that. And just helping them and giving them the tools to be able to support them to be able to do that soul work and really find out who they are and what they want out of life so that they can live the best life.
Mm, fair enough. So, if you did one thing in your life that you've never done before, what would that be?
Um, um, if I could do one thing that I haven't done yet in my life, I guess, you know, um, I really can't think of anything because I feel like right now I'm achieving my goals. So I can't really say I guess I'd like to travel a bit more and, do those kind of things and see the world a bit and whatnot. That's something that I haven't necessarily done a lot of. But other than that, I'm pretty content.
That's good to hear. So,
So, what barriers would you like to see in Australian society removed from culturally and linguistically diverse people with disabilities, Samson?
Um, I, I guess being able to, in a sense, uh, being able to educate and connect with the wider multicultural community, being able to, you know, um, because of a lot of them come from war-torn countries and mistrust of government and things like that, and mistrust of systems and things, which is completely understandable because of where they come from and things of that nature. But being able to show them that it's okay to, you know, get this sort of support, and also being able to give if you can give the kid give the community like some some guidance around being able to stand on their own 2 feet, and being able to show them that for the people that can, they can go they can make a life for themselves, like depending on their capability. Some of them can go get work, and can have the life that they want to live. And if you really ask people with disabilities what do they want out in life, most of them will tell you the most basic things that everyone else has, like being able to go to work, being able to have a house of their own. These are just basic rights that we should all have access to. And if you really ask them that, all they'll tell you is the most basic things that they need, They won't necessarily say, look, I want a Fortune 500 company. I want this. I want a jet, or whatever that might be. They won't say things extravagant because they just want to live a simple and free life.
Mm.
Then they just want their independence like everybody else has.
Yeah. So, what's your vision for cold people with disabilities? So, what's your vision for in 20 years' time?
I guess that my you know my vision for cult communities in 20 years time would be that that people from cult communities get treated equally, and that they get treated as humans and are valued.
Yeah. So, what does an empowered person sound like in your opinion? You've mentioned a couple of things. What comes to mind mainly for you? What? Yeah.
Being able to make choices and decisions for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being able to have that freedom to say, no, I don't like this. No, I don't think this is a good idea. And not have people around you make those decisions for you. Even your supports, like, okay, if my physio says, look, I don't think this is a good idea, or I might think it's a good idea, and I might say to him or her, look, I think that this is a good idea, but I want to try it anyway, even if you don't necessarily think it's a good idea and it might be detrimental. So just being able to have that freedom of choice,
Mm.
and also being able to from the services that people receive, that it's okay to complain and speak up and say that they don't like a particular service.
Mm. Or look at how things are happening, because we're individuals, but we're also part of a community as well. And I was wondering, you know, how do people from culturally and linguistically diverse background, you know, um, how do they see disability? Like, is it different for, like, I know what your parents, which you mentioned earlier, but in terms of the community themselves, what are their opinions about, having your own choice and things like that?
Um, my parents, uh, you know, often would say that they were very encouraging when it came to me making choices and decisions for myself. You know, sometimes obviously my mother would be a bit apprehensive in allowing me to make certain decisions because she's your mom, so she's gonna get a bit defensive when you try to make choices. So that's just I just boil that down to the natural cause of things. So you know, mothers can tend to be overprotective, detrimental to your growth in some aspects. Yeah.
Mm.
But it looks as though we covered this. But what does an empowered person sound like in your opinion?
I just answered that question.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I had to stick out for a little while. I'm not feeling too well today. So, have we done the last question, Claire?
No, we haven't.
So what opportunities are available to mainstream Australians that are not there for coal people with disabilities?
I guess I would like to see a lot more people in the advocacy space um come to, from what I've seen, um apart from me working from ECCV and all that, apart from me working for them, up until me working for them, I didn't really see a lot of advocates from, multicultural communities and being advocates. And also, I would like to see more people with a disability in the advocacy space and of higher of higher importance. And I would like, just like we did with the NDIS, um, you know, that's saying that if you don't include us, it's not about us type of thing. Just including us in those important discussions and asking what we want and making sure that the rules and regulations and the system is as inclusive as it can be. And it's not, I know they try to, when it comes to a system, they always try to make it one size fits all, but no system is ever going to do that. But but you can try and make it as inclusive as possible so that you eliminate less and less people falling through the cracks.
Well, any final comments of wisdom?
I don't have any, unless any of you have something that you'd like to contribute to.
Okay, I'll tell you one. My dad always used to say to me, whenever someone throws you a knife, catch it and throw them back a rose.
Interesting.
Interesting.
And the meaning behind that is don't show aggression with aggression.
Look, there's a lot. I'm open to hearing how you'd like to evaluate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Turning swords into plushes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
it's one that can be unpacked in many ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Your father seems to be quite an enlightened soul, Colette. I don't really know much about you, but yeah, he seems like to be a rather progressive thinker.
Yeah, he's passed on, but yeah, I remember lots of his beautiful things. Yeah.
And what this society tries to teach us is that necessarily not listening to your elders, not listening to people that are older than you, and that tends to nine times out of 10, this is how you get a rebellious nation. This is how you get people doing whatever without necessarily thinking of the consequences, because you don't necessarily want to listen to people that have lived longer than you. So when they try and drop some gems on you about life and what they've gone through and their experiences, you because of some of us might think that we were treated harshly by our parents, or even when we were younger, we used to think that getting a smack from your mum or whatever was a bit cruel, or whatever, or just being punished in general was a bit cruel, things like that. And we used to say to ourselves, I'm not going to raise my kids the way that my parents raised me, in a sense. I feel like that can in itself be detrimental as well, because you don't really want to listen to people who have life experience, who have those knowledge and gems to share with you. Okay, some things, like Julie was mentioning earlier, not every parent is going to come from a nurturing background. They just do the best they can with what they have, and that also comes down to you. In order for you to accept that comes down to you knowing yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Samson, thank you for your time. We're just going to do the funding acknowledgement. You can hang around if you like. Thank you for your time and all your work in the SelfAdvocacy Community Connected program. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from you in the future.
And come back and visit us, yeah?
I will visit, yes.
yeah, congratulations on everything you've done, and we'll catch up another time.
Sounds good. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. As an acknowledgement, we would like to thank the MRC Northwest Management for their support they give to the DND Your Life, Your Voice project. This YouTube channel is funded by the Victorian DHHS and Moreland City Council. DND would like to thank them for providing funding to the things keep moving on me. Funding to this progressive thinking out of the box project, especially in these times, living through the pandemic. COVID-19 has been difficult for people with disabilities, being in isolation. This channel is for them too. And in the next sessions, we will be providing information and support on COVID-19 and lockdown. We would like to thank our guest speaker, Samson, today. And yes, and guest speakers, if you would like to send us some information about what you'd like, questions or guests that you'd like to hear or see, please drop us an email on what you can see on the screen, which is dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com.
So thank you everyone for viewing, and please send us your comments on demand, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.
Bye.